A love triangle. 3 years of secret meetings, endless lies, and a murder that happened the night patience finally ran out. A story of how a man tried to live a double life until it all came crashing down. Where feelings mixed with deceit and infidelity come into play, the situation can spiral out of control at any second. Manuela Bailo was born into an Italian family. She was searching for her happiness, but luck seemed to turn its back on her. For a long time, the woman was involved with a man named Matteo Sandri. They were officially married for almost 10 years, but shortly before the events described, the couple separated. Nevertheless, they had taken out a mortgage together, so they continued to share a roof over their heads. They couldn't move out. The payments bound them more tightly than their feelings ever had. In her youth, Manuela earned a university degree in economics and business, and then threw herself into her work and building a career. She got a job as an economist at a trade union at one of the enterprises. There, she was quickly noticed among the other employees. The young woman proved herself to be a leader, professional and attentive to detail. When she entered the office, her colleagues would involuntarily straighten up, not out of fear, out of respect. A couple of years after she joined the company, she was entrusted with a management position. Despite Manuela being a short and fragile woman, she knew how to work with a team and commanded respect. She found a golden mean between strictness and humanity in her communication. She knew when to speak harshly and when to simply listen. She was valued both at work and in her personal life. After officially separating from her husband, she continued to live her normal life, but still dreamed of a complete family and children. Sometimes in the evenings, she would look at the empty half of the house and think, when will this end? This state of suspension, this waiting. Everything changed when Fabrizio Passini appeared in her life. He was hired for a position at the headquarters of the same trade union where Manuela worked. The newcomer turned out to be cheerful, open, and ready to help, but with a fighting spirit. He was into sports, so he always looked fit and well-groomed. Fabrizio was older than Manuela. This type of man was very different from those she was used to. He loved playing rugby with his buddies and airsoft, constantly training. He even converted his country house in the vicinity of Cremona into an airsoft field for his friends. The property had a real training ground, resembling a warehouse, with a bunch of camouflage and weapons converted to fire plastic pellets. When she first saw his playground, she was surprised. A grown man playing war games? But for some reason, she liked it. This childishness, this energy. Although Manuela and Matteo had separated back in 2015, she was still living with him, but without any intimacy. For a while, she even considered trying to rekindle the relationship. But when Fabrizio entered her world, that thought completely evaporated. Interestingly, the former spouses continued to behave in public as if they were still a couple. On the street, they might walk side by side, greeting neighbors. No one noticed anything. Only their closest friends understood what was really happening. They didn't want to air the details of their personal lives in public, but in reality, they were simply trying to pay off the mortgage on the house. The home was divided in two and used as a duplex. Each had their own door, their own life. formally together, but in reality, apart. To avoid publicizing the appearance of a new man in her life, Manuela kept her relationship with Fabrizio a secret. Only a couple of her closest friends were in the know. She didn't hide the connection from her ex-husband. He knew about the new romance, but wasn't particularly interested in the details. He shrugged when she told him, "So be it. His life, her life." Fabrizio himself didn't broadcast his love affair on every corner either, and it wasn't a matter of modesty. Fabrizio was simply a married man. However, when they became physically intimate, he began to complain that he had been unhappy in his family for a long time, wanted to leave his wife and their 2 teenage children. According to his stories, the divorce was just around the corner. Manuela listened and believed. She wanted to believe, because the alternative was too painful. Over time, Manuela's feelings only grew stronger. She began to tell her friends and loved ones about her emotions, sharing how deeply she had fallen in love. She constantly called her new partner, wanting to be with him all the time, but his wife and children stood in the way. She checked her phone every 5 minutes, waited for messages, listened for every vibration. If, before their dates were purely romantic, now the woman wanted to move in with Fabrizio, maybe even make the relationship official. She stubbornly waited for the moment when he would finally break up with his wife. She made plans, imagined how they would live together, discussed with her friends what furniture they would buy, where they would go on vacation. All of this existed only in her head for now. Manuela even discussed the division of their common property with her ex-husband in case she officially married Fabrizio. They agreed on everything, without conflict. Matteo reacted calmly, too calmly in retrospect. Perhaps he already understood something back then. The only obstacle remaining was her lover, who, for some reason, was dragging his feet on the divorce. Almost a year of the secret affair had passed when Manuela began to act more assertively. They saw each other exclusively during work hours. Her lover would lie to his wife, saying he was stuck at the office late, but instead would go to his mistress. The woman wanted proper dates, to spend weekends with him, but Fabrizio dedicated those days to his family. He constantly used his children as an excuse. For long months, they served as his justification. One time, he needed to take his son to soccer. Another time, to visit his sick mother. A new reason every time. Each time, Manuela swallowed it, although something tightened inside her. In reality, Fabrizio was just having fun, spending time with friends and living for his own pleasure, turning to Manuela exclusively for physical intimacy. Their romance had completely turned into an office affair, but this did not satisfy the woman who craved more. The lovers crossed paths at work, hallway meetings, brief glances, accidental touches when no one was looking. Manuela quickly began to suspect that the man was deceiving and using her. Essentially, he was living a double life. On one hand, Fabrizio portrayed himself as a respectable family man, a faithful husband, and a caring father. On the other hand, there was his mistress, Manuela. Fabrizio and his family regularly went on vacation to Sardinia. His mother also loved to join them on these trips. Naturally, Manuela was not part of the chosen circle. She looked at his photos on social media. The beach, happy faces, children, a perfect family. And she sat at home alone, waiting for his return. She had long begun to suspect that all the tales about separating from his wife, leaving his family, and other excuses were just a complete lie. He would never leave his old life for her. But she had no intention of breaking up with the man she loved. It was obvious that Fabrizio liked her a lot too. He couldn't bring himself to break off the affair with his mistress, but he was persuasive enough in his speeches to constantly convince her to wait just a little longer. He knew the right words, the right intonations. He knew how to calm her down just when she was ready to give it all up. Manuela resigned herself to this and decided to patiently wait for the moment when her lover would finally be with her. She didn't rush him. She convinced herself that this was the right strategy, that pressure would only ruin everything. Fabrizio's wife had no idea about the affair. He asked his mistress to keep quiet about it so that the infidelity wouldn't harm his reputation and financial position in a divorce. Manuela was understanding about this, and Fabrizio assured her that the divorce was a matter of time and he just needed to resolve a number of important issues. The man had a lot of leverage, in particular the division of property and rights to the children. Fabrizio claimed that he and his wife couldn't come to an agreement. That's why everything was being delayed. He often ended the conversation with another tall tale about the complexities of legal proceedings, but in reality, he was simply lying to his mistress during their in-person meetings and phone calls. He spoke at length, in detail, with specifics. The more details, the more plausible the lie sounds. Manuela often called him when she couldn't see him on weekends. He would come to his mistress, declare that his relationship with his wife was over and they would soon be together, but only to spend another night with her. He said everything she wanted to hear, and then he would return home to his wife. Fabrizio continued to lie to his wife as well. All of this required secrecy. The deceit helped explain why he couldn't see his mistress more often. He constantly refused to go to the movies or out to dinner at restaurants so the couple wouldn't be seen, agreeing to meet only in secluded places for obvious reasons: hotel rooms on the outskirts, his mother's villa when she wasn't home, a car in an empty parking lot. However, this was a woman accustomed to taking matters into her own hands and solving everything herself. She became more and more insistent. She took Fabrizio's refusals with great irritation. Sometimes, only the man's skill with words helped keep his lover's emotional outbursts under control, but with each time, it required more and more effort. Despite agreeing to keep quiet, be patient, and wait in her lover's shadow, the woman found this period very difficult. Manuela told her close friends that she was crying more and more often because she couldn't be with the man she loved in the way she wanted. She cried at night when no one could see, wiped away mascara streaks from under her eyes. She couldn't even open up to everyone because Fabrizio had convinced her not to spread information about the affair even among her trusted friends. The woman genuinely loved him, so she discussed these topics very cautiously. And only because she wanted to find understanding and support. She needed someone to talk to. Otherwise, she would have gone mad. Naturally, this couldn't last forever. In June 2017, the first serious problem arose for Fabrizio. His wife found out about his relationship with another woman. How exactly is unknown. Maybe a random message, maybe a tip from someone else. She was so angry that she caused a scene, after which the man was forced to move in with his mother. He spent 10 days there, then apologized to his wife, begged for forgiveness, and his wife agreed. A standard story. Tears, promises, forgiveness. Even now, when a convenient moment had presented himself, the man had no plans to divorce her and abandon his children. Manuela found out he was living with his mother and hoped that Fabrizio would now quickly file for divorce. She called him excited, asked what would happen next. He immediately decided to take advantage of the situation, inventing a new lie that the divorce proceedings were about to start. By this point, the affair had been going on for 3 years, but none of it was ever meant to be. Manuela often caught herself thinking that, for Fabrizio, she had always been just a toy and a way to escape family routine, to have fun, to get a dose of adrenaline, anything but a serious feeling. This thought came to her more and more often, especially when she lay alone in bed, staring at the ceiling. After the fight with his wife, he was back under the same roof with her, so his mistress decided to put an end to it. Manuela was so tired of all the lies that she gave her lover an ultimatum. She demanded that he finally choose either her or his wife. Her voice trembled as she said it, her hands too. The man didn't give a clear answer. He already knew how to act, so he once again began to repeat the old stories about how he would soon break up with his wife, and had even started preparing the divorce papers. Manuela no longer believed him, as she had heard it hundreds of times, but she wanted to believe. Those are two different things. In the spring of 2018, she demanded his wife's phone number to contact her directly and find out if they were really getting a divorce. Fabrizio even agreed, but when Manuela dialed the number, it turned out he had given her a random string of digits. A strange man answered the phone, surprised, and it certainly wasn't his wife's number. Manuela was furious. She knew he was lying again. She called him, screamed into the phone. He remained silent, waiting for the storm to pass. This time, the woman decided to break off the relationship. But Fabrizio wasn't ready. He declared that he would go right now and tell his wife everything. Half an hour later, he called his mistress and informed her that it was over with his wife, and all that was left was to finalize the paperwork. Manuela was satisfied, but she didn't know that it was all just another fabrication. He had simply been sitting in his car in a parking lot, waiting the right amount of time before calling, to make it plausible. At the end of July 2018, Fabrizio decided to organize a dinner with his friends from the rugby and airsoft teams. His wife was also supposed to be at the party. Meanwhile, his mother had taken the grandchildren and gone to Sardinia. The son and daughter-in-law were supposed to join them a couple of days after the get-together. Despite the planned event, the man decided to make time for his mistress as well. He always did that, balancing between two lives, like a tightrope walker. On July 27, 2018, they arranged to meet at a restaurant.
He told his wife he had to visit a friend who had been injured and couldn't make it to the get-together. He told his mistress that he had to take his mother to the airport for her trip to Sardinia. Naturally, this was a lie because she was already there. Manuela forgave him for being late to dinner, so she was now looking forward to their meeting and spending the night together. While she was waiting for her lover, she decided to check if there were any flights to Sardinia that Fabrizio's mother was supposed to have taken, just out of curiosity, or out of distrust. She opened the airline's website, scrolled through the schedule. That's how she found out there were none at that time. Her lover had tried to deceive her once again. She tried to expose the lie again, brought up breaking up, as she believed he was still living with his wife. She wrote him a long message, an angry one, with a lot of question marks.
Having received another barrage of angry messages, the man tried to calm her down, assuring her that their evening together would happen. He just needed to finish some things. Of course, he simply couldn't find a pretext to escape the organized get-together where his wife was present. Fabrizio's wife was at the dinner with the team members, a noisy group, laughter, beer. After 8 in the evening, she noticed he was gone and called his cell phone. "Where are you?" Her husband promised he would join her soon. He tried to explain the delay by saying he was at a sick colleague's house as he had to pick up a work document from him. He spoke calmly, as if he were really standing in someone's hallway. In reality, on July 27th, he had slipped away to spend the night with his mistress. For this, he used his mother's house. The villa where the woman lived was located in Ospitaletto, near Brescia, a quiet place. The neighbors were far away. No one would see anything. The lover managed to deceive his wife. He and Manuela spent the evening of the 27th together, and no one suspected a thing. At least, not yet. Now he had to get away from her to be with his wife and friends in the morning. Manuela had dozed off on the sofa, tired, happy. They had finally spent time together. In the middle of the night on July 28, Fabrizio woke her up to send her away. He gently shook her shoulder. She opened her eyes, not immediately understanding what was happening. He claimed that he urgently needed to go to the hospital because he had tripped and hit his side hard on the sofa. He showed her a bruise on his ribs, said he felt pain and even had difficulty breathing. He winced convincingly, clutched his side. Manuela grew worried and didn't want to let him go to the hospital alone. The plan to escape from her under this pretext had failed. His mistress went with him to the emergency room. A night drive, empty streets. Here, Fabrizio continued to think about how he could slip away. For credibility, he repeated his fabricated story to the doctor and went into the room for an X-ray. While he was in the ward, his wife started texting and calling again to find out if everything was okay and when he would be back from his friend's house. Fabrizio showed her via video call that he was in the hospital, claiming he had hit himself hard while walking his friend's dog. The camera shook, showing white walls, medical equipment. His wife believed him. At the same time, Manuela was sitting outside the room, no less worried about him. She scrolled through her phone, waiting. At the same time, she called him several times and got angry when she realized the line was busy. Someone else was on the line. Manuela didn't trust him because of his constant lies, so she suspected he was talking to his wife, and the story about breaking up with her was a fabrication. Her stomach clenched. At 3:18 a.m., the man was discharged from the emergency room. As expected, the X-ray found nothing, but he again took advantage of the situation. He returned home with Manuela around 4 in the morning. The sky was already beginning to lighten, and so the couple found themselves at the villa. A heated conflict immediately erupted between them. The accumulated months of frustration burst out. The woman was unhappy that he had ignored most of her messages and calls while he was in the X-ray room. Manuela had been unable to reach him several times, so she was sure he had been talking to his wife the whole time. The uncovered deception angered her. Her voice rose, her hands trembled. Once again, he had to invent a lie to justify himself, but it stopped working. Manuela again brought up a final breakup, stating that she was too tired of the role of a mistress, didn't want to live a double life, and therefore proposed to end everything. She spoke quickly, choking on her words. Of course, it was a bluff. In reality, she wanted to be with him, and hoped her words would convince him to leave his wife. But it didn't work. The woman became even more furious when Fabrizio confessed to everything, and also announced that he was going to Sardinia in the coming days with his wife and children. He said it simply, as if he were talking about the weather. After that, Manuela, who all this time believed that a life together with her beloved was just around the corner, felt betrayed. She continued to shout so loudly that Fabrizio suggested they go inside the house to avoid attracting the neighbors' attention. He took her by the hand. She pulled away, but followed him. The windows in the neighboring houses were dark, but he was afraid someone would wake up, would hear, would remember. A few hours later, the man returned to his wife and friends. He behaved as if nothing had happened. He joked, laughed, drank beer. When 35-year-old Manuela didn't show up for work after the weekend, her colleagues became concerned. At first, they thought she was sick, but she always gave notice. The whole situation seemed increasingly strange, as they couldn't reach her through the usual means. She communicated only through text messages, short replies, no details. The first person to call Fabrizio was Francesca, one of Manuela's best friends. The woman knew about the love triangle. She demanded an explanation as to why Manuela was ignoring everyone and behaving strangely. This happened on Tuesday, after she had been absent all weekend. Fabrizio claimed he didn't know the details, as he hadn't seen the woman since last Friday. He spoke with concern, the right intonations. He feigned worry and asked Francesca to contact him if she heard any news. Then he hung up and exhaled. After that, the man continued to spend time with his wife, even taking selfies and sending them to his children who were in Sardinia with their grandmother at the time. He smiled for the camera, hugged his wife, a picture-perfect image. The missing woman's family contacted law enforcement and reported her disappearance. However, her fate remained a mystery for the following weeks. All this time, the police were investigating, questioning the missing woman's inner circle and looking into the circumstances of her life. This is how they learned about the love triangle she was involved in, which raised serious suspicions about Fabrizio, his wife, and Manuela's ex-husband. Detectives spoke with Matteo. The husband was also concerned that Manuela hadn't been seen at their home for several days. He sat across from the investigators, nervously fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. The story's heroine was tracked on July 28, 2018, by surveillance cameras installed at her home. The footage showed her packing a bag with clothes and belongings and leaving the shared house at around 5 in the evening. Her movements were calm, no rush. She never returned to that house. Manuela got into her car, a three-door gray Opel Corsa, and headed towards Brescia. The car was eventually found after searching areas of the city, but it provided no leads for the further search. The interior was clean, no signs of a struggle. No one in Manuela's inner circle had any idea what could have happened to her, and this was a very responsible woman who never disappeared without warning and valued her job. She maintained close relationships with her relatives and friends, regularly communicating with them. Her uncharacteristic behavior raised concerns. This wasn't like her. On August 2, 2018, the Carabinieri spoke with Fabrizio Passini for the first time. This happened shortly before his departure to Sardinia. The man admitted that he had a secret relationship with Manuela, but claimed their affair had ended the previous year after his wife found out. According to him, the last time he saw the missing woman was on Friday, July 27th, as they worked at the same company. They were just communicating as colleagues and nothing more. He spoke confidently, looked them in the eye. There were suspicions against him, but no proof. The police let Fabrizio go and continued the search. They checked surveillance camera footage from Manuela's house. It showed that over the last few months, Fabrizio had visited the house where she lived with her ex-husband at least several times. The car in the footage was the same one. The license plate matched. This meant he was clearly lying about them having ended the romance and just being colleagues. Thus, a prime suspect emerged, who had been caught in a lie. Fabrizio and his wife went to Sardinia, where he reunited with his mother and children. He didn't yet know that he had become the prime suspect for the Carabinieri. He was being closely watched, and they continued to gather evidence during his vacation. They checked phone calls, messages, bank transactions, everything. Meanwhile, Manuela's best friend Francesca, as well as her sister Ariana, went on local television. The women held a press conference, asking anyone with information to help with the search for the missing woman. They sat before the cameras with red eyes. Francesca held a photograph of Manuela in her hands. The incident caught the attention of a local newspaper journalist named Andrea. The man even managed to get Fabrizio's number and contact him. He hoped to find out new details, but heard the same story the police already knew. Rumors were already circulating about Manuela's disappearance, the love triangle, and other circumstances of the woman's life related to her lover. Taking advantage of the situation, the journalist directly asked Fabrizio if he was involved in Manuela's death. There was a pause on the other end of the line, short but noticeable. Naturally, he denied everything. His voice was steady, controlled. The Carabinieri, meanwhile, were checking the messages and phone conversations between Fabrizio and Manuela, finding more and more contradictions to the prime suspect's words. The messages were intimate, full of promises. They were able to confirm that the lovers were constantly corresponding, which only convinced them that the man was lying. Their romance was ongoing. This information became public while he was still on his family trip. His wife once again questioned him about the affair, but her husband lied just as he always had, looked her in the eyes and lied. On August 20, Fabrizio returned from Sardinia with his wife, children, and mother, tanned and rested. The first people to greet him were the carabinieri, who revealed all the information they had gathered. They were standing at the airport exit. Finally, his wife, who was still in the dark, understood that he hadn't actually left Manuela. Her face turned pale. However, the wife didn't even have time to say anything, as the suspicious man was put into a police car to be taken to the station for questioning. The children watched in silence, not understanding what was happening. After several hours of intense questioning, the man was broken. He confessed to the murder, but claimed it happened by accident. He lowered his head, began to speak quietly. Fabrizio led the police to the place where he had dumped his mistress's body. It was a long drive, down a country road. By this point, Manuela's body was severely decomposed. She could only be identified by a small tattoo of a black heart on one of the fingers of her right hand. Her sister, who went to identify the body, recognized it. She screamed when she saw that heart, fell to her knees. Despite his confession, Fabrizio denied that it was a premeditated murder, trying to blame it all on a random confluence of events. At first, he even said that Manuela had fallen down the stairs in the heat of the conflict, accidentally misstepping. However, this version immediately seemed unconvincing. Not a single bloodstain was found on the stairs, nor any signs of a fall. Furthermore, the autopsy showed no injuries consistent with a fall. Despite the degree of decomposition, it was obvious that the fatal wounds to Manuela were knife blows to the throat, 2 deep cuts. The data collected by the Carabinieri helped reconstruct the events. Viewing the surveillance camera footage made a significant contribution. After the trip to the medical center on that fateful night, the conflict began. To avoid attracting attention, Fabrizio suggested they go into the house. As soon as the lovers were inside the garage, the woman began to argue even more fiercely. She screamed. Fabrizio tried to calm her down, but it didn't work. She wasn't listening. At some point, he lost control of himself after hearing several insults. What exactly she said is unknown, but it was enough. In a rage, the man grabbed a piece of steel pipe that was lying in the garage, hit her on the head, after which his mistress immediately lost consciousness and fell. A dull thud. The body slumped onto the concrete floor. Fabrizio panicked even more, but instead of helping her, he took a knife that was on the workbench in the garage and slit her throat twice. The movements were quick, decisive. A pool of blood spread on the floor, growing larger and larger, dark, almost black in the nightlight. Fabrizio realized he needed to get rid of the body, so the first thing the killer did was wrap the fragile Manuela in a large trash bag and secure it with adhesive tape. His hands were shaking. The tape stuck to his fingers. He placed the body in the trunk of his car and then began to clean up the crime scene in the house. He washed the floor, the walls. He worked quickly, methodically. After that, he left the body in the car's trunk and simply drove away from his mother's villa, taking the victim's bag and cell phone with him. He turned on the radio to drown out the silence, to not hear his own thoughts. On July 28, Fabrizio met with his wife and lied once again to justify his long absence. At the same time, he used Manuela's phone to send messages to her relatives, employer, and friends. He typed short phrases, tried to copy her style. He was still thinking about how to dispose of the body in the most secure way. The man planned to find a safe place where he could dump the bag so that it would never be found. He did everything he could to buy time, telling Manuela's colleagues that she had a fever and needed a few days to rest at home. While this worked with her coworkers, the victim's family immediately noticed that the messages from the woman had become strange. Not the right words, not the right tone. They tried to contact her by phone to hear her voice. Naturally, they were ignored. On July 30th, Fabrizio put on the camouflage uniform he used for playing airsoft. He looked at himself in the mirror. His face was calm. He finally removed his mistress's body from his mother's villa and headed towards the rural area of Cremona. This was the location of the same farmhouse where he periodically played and trained with his team, the place where he had once been happy. The man threw the plastic bag with the body into a cesspit, then turned off Manuela's cell phone, which he had been using for the past few days, and threw it away as well. He stood there for a few seconds. Silence. Only the wind in the trees. Over the next few days, he returned to this place again, probably to make sure the remains hadn't been found and couldn't be discovered. He checked. He listened. He was afraid someone would stumble upon it by chance. In the door pocket of his Mitsubishi, 2 knives used during the murder were found. One was clean, the second had traces of blood. This became another convincing piece of evidence of his guilt in court. The hearing regarding the murder of Manuela Bailo was held under a fast-track procedure. The prosecutor requested the maximum sentence, 30 years. However, at the end of the trial, 48-year-old Fabrizio Passini was sentenced to 16 years in prison. He sat motionless as the verdict was read. He didn't flinch, he didn't cry. Curiously, detectives were never able to uncover the exact motive for the murder. The perpetrator himself claimed it was done by accident, in a fit of rage. However, everyone who was well acquainted with the history of his affair believed that Fabrizio had simply trapped himself in his own lies. A 3-year web of deceit from which there was no escape. Only one way to end it all. The wife he never left took the initiative herself and filed for divorce. Upon learning about the continuation of his affair and the murder, she won the property and alimony in court and had him stripped of his visitation rights with his sons, at least until they reached the age of majority. Neither his wife nor his children visit him in prison. He writes letters. They are returned unopened.